All right, let's wrap up this chapter by taking a look at a few examples of how to work with calendars in Python. Python's library provides a couple of useful utilities for working with calendars in both text and HTML formats, as well as some other date and calendar utilities. So let's take a look at the module for how to work with this. So let's open up our calendars_start.py file. And in order to use the calendar module in a Python app, you first need to import the module. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll import the calendar. And that statement will import all the various classes from the calendar module into my app. So let's start off by just creating a plain text calendar. So to do that, I'm going to use the text calendar class. So I'm going to write calendar.textCalendar, and I'm going to specify that the week should begin on Sundays. And then I'll format this into a string, so I'll call the calendar's format month method, and I'm going to choose the year and month for January, and a couple of other options to format the month, and then I'll print out the string. So the format month method lets me format a particular month into a text string, and then I just print the results. So let's save, and let's run this, right? And you can see in the output that it's formatted January 2022 for me. The weeks begin on Sundays, right? And got another week here that starts on Saturday, right? Let's go back and change that parameter though. Let's change this to a Monday, right? And then let's save and run it again. And now we can see that the weeks begin on Mondays, and the formatting of the weeks has been updated to match. All right. Now let's see how to do the same thing with HTML. And for that, I'm going to use, surprise, the HTML calendar class. So I'll create a variable HC, and I'll call HTML calendar. And once again, I want the calendar to start on Sundays. And then I'll do the same thing with a string. I'll just have to call format month. And I'll do January, and then I'll print the stir. All right, let's go ahead and comment this out. And let's save and let's run. All right, so you can see that here I'm getting this HTML output. There's a table that contains all of my calendar information and table rows and table columns and so on. Now I'm not going to walk through all the HTML code, but you can see that it works. If you want to go ahead and paste this into a browser to see the results, feel free to do so. Let's go see another example. So I'll go ahead and comment this out. You can also use the calendar class to perform some common operations on dates. So for example, I might have a need to iterate over the days of a given month, and I can use the iter_month_days method to do this. So what I can do is I'll write a for loop, and I'll write for I in C dot iter_month_days. And I should comment one of these statements to create the calendar. So I'll call iter_month_days, and I'll iterate over August of 2022, and I'll just print the day number. So this function is going to return numbers that represent each day in the month. So if I run this, you'll see, so each one of these numbers represents a day in the month. So in August, there's 31 days, right? So here's day number 1, and that's obviously a Sunday because that's the first day of the week. And if we scroll all the way down, you'll notice that there's some trailing zeros. And what that means is that indicates that those days are in that week that belong to another month. So the 31st is the last day of August. And then since the weeks end on a Saturday, right? So this is going to be a Saturday, this is going to be a Friday, a Thursday, and a Wednesday, but those belong to the next month, right? So that's that example. Okay, let's keep on going. The calendar class also provides some useful utilities for the current locale. So I can loop over the names in the month names and day name properties on the calendar class. So let me comment out this example and we'll try this out. So what this means is I don't have to have code in my application that knows what the names of the months are around the world. The system's locale will just give them to me based upon where my app happens to be running. So I'll write for name in calendar.monthName, and I'll print the name, and then I'll do the same thing with days. So for day in calendar.dayname, I'll print the day. All right, so let's go ahead and save this and run it. And you can see that because I'm here in the United States, I'm getting the months in English names, right? So it's January, February, March, and so on. Now, if I was in another part of the world, or my local system here was set to be someplace in Europe, for example, I would get the locale-based names. And you can see in the second example, same thing, right? I'm getting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So I can get the names of both the months and the days as they would appear in the current locale for where the computer is, or I guess where the system happens to be set to. All right, let's try one more example. So I'll comment this out. Let's do something fun. Let's suppose I had a team of people, and the team meets on the first Friday of every month. And what I want to do is write a small script that just prints out what those dates are for the upcoming year. So that way I can give that list of days to my team members, and they would know what the meeting dates are for the upcoming year. So what I need to do is calculate when the first Friday happens in each month, and then calculate the date that represents that day. So let's go ahead and start our script. I'll print out team meetings will be on. Okay. And then I'm going to have a for loop. So I'm going to loop over all the months in the range from 1 to 13. And remember that 13 is not inclusive in the range. So this will give me months 1 through 12. Now what I'm going to do is get an array of weeks that represents each one of these months. So I'm going to do that by calling the calendar's month calendar function for the given year, that's next year, and then each one of the months. So each time through this loop, M will be a month number, and then I'm using the calendar class's month calendar function. That's going to give me back a lists of weeks that represent the days in the given month. So what I'm going to do then is have two variables, week 1, and that's going to be the first week that gets returned, and then week 2, which will be the second entry in that list. So the first Friday of that month has to be somewhere within the first 2 weeks, right? So I've got two local variables here, week 1, week 2, which I get from my array, and then I just need to see which of those 2 weeks has the first Friday. So to do that, I'm going to use the calendar's Friday constant to index into each of these arrays. So I'll say if week 1 and the calendar.Friday index of week 1 is not equal to 0, then I know that the meeting day is in week 1 on calendar.Friday. Otherwise, the meeting day has to be in week 2 on the same index, calendar.Friday. So remember, we saw this earlier. If the day number of a particular day in the week is 0, then that means that that day is part of a different month. So if the Friday value of the first week is equal to 0, then that Friday was in the previous month, and then this particular month starts on a Saturday, so the first Friday has to be in the second week. So now at this point, I have my meet day variable set to whichever the first Friday is worked out to be, whichever week they were in, and then I just need to print out the month name and the day. So I'm going to print out calendar.monthName, right, for the current month, and then the meet day. All right, and that's pretty much it. That's all I have to do. So let's go ahead and save, and let's run this. And you can see in the output, right, we've looped through all the months starting January going down to December, and now we have a list of the dates for the first Fridays of each month. So now I can give this list of dates to my team, and they'll know what the actual dates are for the first Friday in each one of the months we're going to have our team meeting. Such is the power of Python.